Welcome to this week's What's for Dinner video. My name is Ashley. I'm going to be showing you 3 different meals I made this past week. I don't always follow recipes exactly, but if you're interested, I've linked some similar recipes down below. The first dinner I'm going to be showing you is called Cheesy Creamy Beef and Shells. So I'm going to start out with 1 pound of ground beef. I'm just going to cook this in a pan until it's all nice and brown and cooked all the way through. This meal idea is from Pinterest. I did take the idea and I used some of the ingredients just to kind of make my own. That will be linked down below. So now I'm going to get started on the sauce. With the rest of the grease, I just added a little bit of flour just to help thicken up the sauce. So the next step is to add some chicken broth. I'm just going to add 1.5 cups of water, and then I'm going to add some chicken bouillon powder, and I am adding 1 large can of tomato sauce. So next I'm going to start adding in my seasonings. I'm going to add in some onion powder, some Italian seasoning, some paprika, and some salt and some pepper. And for the creamy part of the sauce, I'm going to add in some heavy whipping cream. I don't have any exact measurements. Once the sauce has been cooking, I'm going to add back in my ground beef. So after the shells were done boiling, I just drained them and then I added the sauce into the big pot. I'm just adding back my shells now. I'm going to toss everything together and then I'm going to add in some cheese. So I'm just going to add as much cheese as I want. It is a cheesy pasta and we love cheese. So I'm just going to mix everything together, let the sauce come up to a boil, and then it will start thickening as it cools. I just cooked some broccoli on the side. I just roasted it in the oven, and then I put a piece of garlic bread in the oven for my fiance. This is how everything looked when it was done, and then I just topped it with a little bit more cheese. The next dinner I'm going to be showing you is a white sauce enchilada casserole. This is from Pinterest as well. I just didn't make actual enchiladas. I just made a casserole, but I used the idea for the white sauce from a Pinterest recipe. So I am just going to start out with making my Mexican rice. I am just cooking 1 cup of white rice. I'm just toasting it. I'm going to use half a teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of garlic salt. I'm just going to toast this around, let the flavors start to smell in the air, and then I usually add the tomato sauce after this part, but I forgot and I just added the water. It doesn't really matter, probably I just added the tomato sauce to the water. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder and 1 teaspoon of tomato bouillon powder. I'm just mixing this all together, and then I'm going to bring it up to a boil, put the lid on it, and turn the heat down. So next I'm going to work on the white enchilada sauce. I am just going to start out with making like a roux. I'm just using some butter and then some flour. Next for the sauce, I'm going to add 2 cups of water and then 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder, which is chicken broth, and then I'm just going to mix this all together, grab a whisk, and then make sure everything is combined. Next for the sauce, I'm going to start seasoning it. So I am just going to use some onion powder, some garlic salt, some taco seasoning, and some cumin. Once the sauce starts to cook a little bit, I'm going to add in my other ingredients. I'm going to add part of a can of some green diced chilies. I'm just going to mix that all together. And then I'm going to add in some cheese and some sour cream. The sauce is basically done at this point. You just want to let it cook and then start to thicken up a little bit. Now to start assembling my casserole, I'm just going to lay a little bit of the sauce down at the bottom just to make sure nothing sticks. So then I'm going to start assembling the casserole. I'm just going to lay down the corn tortillas. That way the entire bottom is covered. This is such a lazy way to make enchiladas, but it's so easy. So I did just cook a couple chicken breasts in my Instant Pot, and then I just shredded the chicken up. I just seasoned it a little bit with some Mexican spices and some green chilies. I just tossed that in the middle of the casserole, and then I'm going to layer the top with the corn tortillas and the remainder of the sauce. So I just spread out the sauce to cover the corn tortillas, and now I'm just going to layer the top of the casserole with some cheese. This will go in the oven at about 350 till everything is nice and bubbly. This is how the casserole looked when it was done. I just topped it with some cilantro. This was so good. I will definitely make this again. We just served it with my Mexican rice. This next dinner is another Pinterest idea. This is some cheesy chicken stuffed crescent rolls. So I'm just going to start out with my chicken breasts. I'm just going to use 2 chicken breasts. I'm just going to trim them up into some small bite-sized pieces because these will go inside the crescents. Next, I'm just going to lightly season the chicken. I'm just going to do some garlic salt and some onion powder and a little bit of some garlic powder. So next I'm going to work on the mixture that goes at the bottom of the baking dish. I am using a can of cream chicken. I've never used these cans cream of. They just freak me out. I don't know why. I don't really like them. This is the first time I used it. The recipe called for cream of mushroom, but I don't really like mushrooms. So I will give my honest thoughts towards the end, but I just layer this on the bottom of the baking dish, and then you layer the crescent rolls on top. So next I'm going to start working on my chicken. I just drizzled a little bit of oil in a pan and it is heating up. Now I'm going to add my 2 chicken breasts that I cut up to the pan to start cooking them, and I will cook this until it's all the way cooked through. So once the chicken was done, you're supposed to add cheese to the pan. You just turn the heat off. I ended up adding a little bit of the heavy cream to kind of help make it a little bit more thicker and saucier. So now to start assembling them is pretty easy. You just put a little spoonful. I don't really know how much. Mine kind of spilled out a little bit, but it kind of was fine. They expand. You just roll them up like so. So my honest review is I probably would not make these again. They were creative, but they weren't anything special. The bottoms get soggy because they're sitting in the filling, but they were edible and they weren't bad. They did the job. This is how it turned out when it was done. I just served it with some broccoli. Thank you so much for watching this week's What's for Dinner video. Make sure you come back next week for another one.